Welcome to Smart Questions. This is where, as a team, we take challenges that have come up from conversations we've had with clients in the last few days, and we explore some of the key salient points from it. It's not all about what the textbooks would say, and we won't necessarily come up with all of the whole range of solutions, but the idea is that we cover enough that there's at least a good takeaway that you can have that will help you to address that particular challenge or question that has come up. So we hope you find it useful. Great. So welcome to another episode of Smart Questions. I'm here with Louise Blunt. So Louise, what's the question we're going to address this time?
The question for today is, how do I manage boundaries with a client who is constantly requesting more and more of our time?
So it could be two types of things here, couldn't it? It could be overstepping the boundaries as it implies of out of hours and those sort of things, or it could be that actually it's a bit of scope creep coming in here. So what's the first thing we'd say with this then, Louise?
Well, I think it's first and foremost, I'd have a look back at, you feel that their client is constantly demanding more and more of your time. Well, just go back and have a look, or maybe monitor over a couple of weeks exactly what is happening here. What are they doing? Is it mission creep or scope creep? Are they asking for things that are outside of what you think you've agreed? And I'm using that word advisor to start with. Or is it that they are overstepping the boundaries? So constant email, constantly calling, maybe calling out of hours. So just have a look at what it is they're actually doing, because it tends to be that you get this feeling. But then for me, you just need to test exactly what is happening, because once you've done that, you'll know how to handle it. So let's assume it's mission creep then, or scope creep.
Right. So what do we do then? We've agreed a scope of work and they're asking for something that's outside of that scope. What's the problem there?
Well, first of all, have you properly agreed the scope of works?
Yeah.
Because that is often the root cause of the problem. You haven't perhaps been as clear with the client about what is included in the price that you have set. So again, make sure that you initially, when you engage with the client, make sure that you are clear about, where the boundaries lie in terms of the whole scope. And if they are starting to constantly demand outside that scope or outside what you consider you've agreed, then don't be afraid to go back to them and charge them for it.
Yep. But we
never
often
be
are,
afraid.
aren't we? We often are a bit reticent. We feel that maybe for the relationship or whatever, a special client, maybe we should do that extra bit of work.
Yeah, and there's such a thing. I mean, full well that I'm one for lean and lean management and the 8 wastes. And there is one of the 8 wastes which talks about one of the wastes is exceeding customer needs.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very clearly, it's not exceeding customer expectations, but it's exceeding their needs. So again, it's establishing, what they need and what you've agreed to deliver for that need.
Yeah. And
then making sure that you don't allow the time to be taken up, because you're losing out twice if you are giving extra time to a client. You're losing out because you're not charging them for it, and they're going to continually expect more and more and more because you're giving it.
Yeah. And
you're also reducing the amount of time you've got to deal with clients who are going to pay for it. So it's kind of like a double whammy. So it is well worth going back and having a look what's going on and what you can deal with.
And it's also good. People often think about including in a scope of work what is included, but very rarely do people actually put in what is not, don't they? And it's quite a good idea to actually specifically list out things that are excluded or are outside the scope of this work, and then it's much clearer, isn't it?
Mm.
Okay, so that's if people are, and of course, if it's outside of the scope of work, then as you were saying earlier, we should just charge for it, shouldn't we? We should
agree the charges. I mean, sticking in a bill without saying anything is usually a bit of a no-no. But don't be afraid to open that door and have that conversation. And if they repeatedly transgress, then you've told them. So just do it.
And what about then if it's the other side of the coin and it's things that are clients coming to us outside of hours or outside of what we think are the right sort of boundaries for the work?
Well, I think first and foremost, you've got to look at yourself. Have you allowed that to happen?
Yeah.
So in other words, have you, and often we do this for the right reasons, or we think we're doing it for the right reasons. You know, it's a new client or something. We think we need to be on it, and just responding really, really quickly. But one of the problems with that is that you then set an expectation that will always be the case. You know, have you been guilty of responding during hours? So have you created that expectation in their minds that you will jump whenever they say?
Yes, you're actually encouraging and reinforcing that behavior, aren't you? And we're going to be blunt about it. You get what you deserve, don't you?
You do.
We're going to be blunt about it, Louise Blunt.
I got that, Kevin.
Yes, but not everybody listening will get that.
Oh dear. So looking at that side of it, first and foremost, look, have you created a problem for yourself? And maybe that is quite a hard one to back out of, because you've sort of helped to create that problem. But again, you know, there are different ways of dealing with it. So for instance, you know, not responding in the middle of the night, or, you know, at that last second, or just slowing down your response rate, not hugely, but a little bit, and just backing slowly out of it if you've created that problem. But hopefully what you'll do is you'll learn for next time, which is you will set and manage the expectations, again, within your relationship with them as to what they can expect. And don't forget to ask the question, you know, if somebody sends you an email asking you for something, doesn't mean to say they absolutely have to have it the day after tomorrow, or in 3 minutes time. You know, look at your workload as well. And you know, many's the time, or not many's the time, sometimes in my sort of manufacturing days, you'd look at a deadline and your automatic reaction is, if somebody wants something delivered by a certain time, and you look at it and go, you know, if I throw the whole schedule up in the air, I could just about manage that. But then you pick up the phone and say,
yeah,
do you really need it then?
Yes.
But you don't stop with, do you really need it then? You've worked out where it fits and how it works for you. So it's, do you really need it then? Because if I can deliver it for here.
Yeah. So this is the thing about checking back with the client as to whether we think it's urgent because the client's asked us, so we think therefore it must be. But actually, more, as you say, probably more often than not, it's not actually as urgent as it might seem, and it might be then that you can build that more into the correct schedule that you need to do. You might also be able to build it into the business rhythm a little bit more, create your business rhythm and say, well, actually, maybe instead of you phoning me every day with something like this and a little change or a little thing you want me to do, should we have a conversation once a week, perhaps, and do several things at the same time? And that certainly has worked very successfully in the past. There's a couple of little other specific things, aren't there, just with emails. If you might like to get, you might actually not mind responding to an email at 8 o'clock at night while you're watching Taggart or whatever you're watching in the evening, but if that's on at 8 o'clock, but actually you can use some of the functions within your email within email to your advantage there. You can schedule the response. So just because you might want to type the response at that time and you're happy to do that, doesn't mean you have to send it at that time. So you can schedule that for 8 o'clock the following morning, or 9 o'clock, or whenever it is that you want to send that. And the same at the weekends. You may actually, I can deal with that now, but rather than actually send it directly, then schedule it for Monday morning, and you're then encouraging the right kind of behavior back with your clients.
Yeah. It is true. If you jump in the middle, and also sometimes that also creates an issue with the person you're dealing with as well, because if you start responding to something, they may have just gone, oh bloody yes, I just need to get this off my chest. Brrr, gone. Your immediate response then puts them under pressure. They're thinking, blimey, I better respond now, and it creates a whole load of bad behaviours on both.
Yeah.
Sides.
And I think it also, we need to look at ourselves a little bit here as well, because how many times as business owners we're probably thinking about work, if not actually working at the weekends quite a lot, and we might be tempted to fire off an email to one of our team members, and again we're putting them in that awkward position, which is they may feel, oh, it's the boss, I probably ought to respond to that on Saturday night at 9 o'clock or whenever it is that you're doing it. Well, that's not really fair on them. So maybe just think a moment before you send that. And again, schedule it. If you want to write it to get it off your own chest and out of your head so you don't forget, fine, do it if you want to, but schedule it. And indeed, I think Microsoft Outlook has now built that function into it, where if you're doing something out of standard office hours, I think it actually prompts you to say, are you sure that you want to send that? We don't use Microsoft Outlook here. We use the Gmail side of things. It doesn't have that in there, but you can still schedule when you want to send something out.
And of course, if you're a technical numpty like I am, you just put something in. I've seen this happen a lot in emails. You can put something in your email which just says, I'm not expecting a reply now. It's just, I'm working the hours that fit with me. Please feel free to respond in the hours that suit you.
Yeah. So
it just, again, takes that little bit of pressure off the response.
A bit of mutual respect, isn't it? Which is what it's about. So if it's the people outside of hours, it's a little bit about not reinforcing the bad behavior, if you like, if we call it bad behavior, but trying to reinforce the good behavior, but also having a conversation with them to just find out how urgent things really are. If it's a bit about the scope creep and they're asking for more work, then again, it's having that conversation. But ideally, we've set the boundaries nice and early on, set the expectations and the scope. But it's having that conversation and checking whether actually that is in scope or not, and then charging and invoicing appropriately.
And the clue is in the word conversation. Doing it by email generally doesn't get the results that you want. So have that conversation. Brilliant.
Good. I think that's a couple of good points. I'm sure there's lots of more things that we could discuss, but in the interest of this being a coffee break kind of chat, then I think we've covered a couple of good things. Thank you very much, Louise.
Thank you.
If you found that useful, imagine what it'd be like coming along to ScaleUp Club, where you'll have other business owners that will be raising challenges, but helping you to address your challenges on an ongoing basis. So just look in the description and the comments to find out how you can come along to the next ScaleUp Club. And also, why not have a look at my book, The Entrepreneurial Scale Up System? You'll find the answers to all sorts of questions in there, along with that system of how to scale up your business. So hopefully look forward to seeing you soon.